Okay, well, hello everybody. Good to see you. Thanks for joining. I thought we could still, in our community calls, we've been chanting at the beginning, and people seem to like it. So we'll start with this chant that, or this verse that Professor Bryant has encouraged us to memorize. And I do an om and then call and response, but you won't. You'll respond on mute. I'll just chant twice. You can join me the second time. Do om first. Oh, you got someone unmuted. Ooh, gotcha. It's okay. I'll do it again. Together on mute. Okay. So, Federico and I have worked on documents together, and I'm going to do my best to get through it. Of course, when we did this with Professor Bryant, he did it over 2 classes, but I did try to really just have the Sandhi rules from Goldman in my document and kind of take out the extra explanation stuff. So I would ask that we save questions for the end, but do note your questions down if something comes up as we move through. And Federico suggested that maybe at a halfway-ish point, we can take a pause and see how everyone's feeling. If it's feeling like too much, maybe we split it up and we finish in another session. Because the point is to review and not to bowl you over a second time with all the Sandhi rules. But as Professor Bryant's thumbs up, but as Professor Bryant always says, going over it a second time will clarify things. So maybe we'll move through it smoothly, and the review will go quick. So this is the document. Hold on, I need to see it myself. I'm seeing the chant still. Is it this one? Yes. You can see it. It starts with coalescence. Yes? Is that what you see, everyone? Thanks. Thumbs up. All right. Well, we start off pretty simple with a vowel sandhis. And here, this first rule: 2 simple vowels of the same pair form a long vowel, regardless of the vowel's length. So any combination. So a short plus a short long short plus a long still long etc. So in any of those combinations, long vowel. Yeah, I think that's good. I'm seeing nodding heads. I'll open you up, okay, so I can see more people. Perfect. Then we move on to combining dissimilar vowels, where the first is or and then regardless of length leads to another long vowel, but here a diphthong. So we have plus e, which gives you a plus u, which gives you o, plus r, plus a, which is a guna. We're going to see those after. This is already a diphthong, but plus a gives you I, the vredi form or more expanded form. And it would be the same for a plus o. It gives you ow, the more expanded diphthong. So we'll look at those here. We're good so far with these? Okay, so here's where we see your vowel strength, the simple vowel, and then as it takes on more expansion into guna and into vridhi, this is the chart that we have, 3.7 in the text. So is its own guna, and then the vridhi is long e, goes to a in guna, and then to I, u to o, and then to ow, r to ad, and then to ar. And then in certain Sandhi rules, we'll see further along when it comes to dissimilar vowels combining, what's the next one? It can become its semi-vowel, antasta. So I put those semi-vowels here at the bottom of the chart, as Professor Bryant had suggested we do. So your E becomes its corresponding semi-vowel y, and U becomes v, and r becomes r, or r. Two dissimilar vowels, and the first is a non-a vowel, long or short. First vowel changes to its corresponding semi-vowel, and so the correspondences are here. It's just repetition of what's up here, 3.9, and then some examples here. Agachami, agachami. I should be careful with my shorts and longs, plus aham. Agachamyaham. So you see the E here coming into contact with the a becomes a ya. Yeah. The u here coming into contact with the long whether it's long or short, it's going to become its semi-vowel v, and then the same here with r becoming r, which is hard to make a distinction between, but this is the guna form. Yeah? Oh, sorry, the semi-vowel form. Oh my goodness, better not get myself tripped up. The semi-vowel of the vowel r. So now we get into, so Federico had this this visual of the Sandhi rules. So this is our first chart that I'll let Federico explain to you all.
Thank you, Frances. You might have realized already that the linear fashion in which the rules are presented in Goldman's is, on the one hand, the only way to present rules in a book. But once you start using them, it's a really non-linear process in the sense that you need to jump back and forth between different rules after making some decisions. And I've tried to illustrate this process by a typical flowchart diagram. In fact, I've tried to do this for all the rules, but it's a work in progress. So we'll exemplify here how it works, and maybe we'll update you later. So let's take an example, and I'll put it in the chat for now, but then we'll integrate it with the document. So let's say we have Rama Ayam, which is, this is Rama, right? So then what do? Are the two vowels identical? We say yes, and we apply rule 3.3, and you get the Ramo, and am I right actually? Probably not.
No, that's real.
Probably
That's
not.
rule. That's rule 335.
No. It is not. Okay, so you know what? Let's forget my examples that I was going to insert. You will simply use the examples that Frances has already given you afterwards, but I will just show you the obvious thing, which is already shown here, and how to go with this. So you look at the initial sound. Let's see, you need to check the initial sound of the next word and the last sound of the previous word, and if both are vowels, then so indeed a lot of work will have to be done here, because there are four combinations. You have a vowel-vowel combination, you have vowel at the end and consonant at the beginning, you have a consonant at the end and vowel at the beginning, and you have consonant. So for the simplest case, you have vowel-vowel combination. You might ask yourself whether the vowels are identical. And if the answer is yes, then you will apply the respective rule in 3.3 that Francis went over with you, and you might use any of the examples given there. But if the two vowels are not identical, there are all sorts of possibilities. But picking up on a simple case, let's see whether the first vowel of the next word is a short a or a long a. If yes, then you go for rule 3.4. If no, you go for the rule 3.8. And as you can imagine, with all the four possibilities that I enlisted, vowel, 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 consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, there are a lot of possibilities. So it's just a snippet to give a tease for what it looks like and how it might work. Of course, we'll update you as I promised later. And again, even if the two vowels are not identical, there are more combination than just the one presented here. But we'll gradually work it out and send it to you. Back to you, Francis.
Okay. So so some people are more visual, so this might be a helpful way to think about the rules, to see them in a sort of chart. So this is basically the ones that we've done up until now, for this chart. Then we go on to complex vowels. So we have A, which is a combination of A and E. We have I, which is long A plus E. O, which is a combination of A and U. And ow, which is a combination of long A plus U. Yeah. So when the complex vowels occur before another vowel sound, they get split up into these different parts before it takes these two steps. So first, the complex vowel is analyzed into its components, as we see up here, and then the final part of that splitting of the components is changed to its corresponding semivowel. You know? So these are internal Sandhi examples from when we're creating or conjugating these particular verbs. In the example, we have G, and it's from the first gana. The sign is a, so you would add an a, and there's guna of the root vowel in all forms where possible. So these are the rules here I've listed for the first gana, which this verb is part of. So we need to add an a, but we also need to guna the root vowel. The root vowel is e. So the guna of e is a. And then the gana sign for this group, you add an a after that. But then your a gets split up as a complex vowel into a and e when you add the gana sign a. And then this second part of your complex vowel takes semivowel, so it becomes ya. So that's where we get jayatu in the end here, because it goes from j plus a becomes jai plus a, and then the ending tu, you get jayatu. And this was the reference in Goldman. Is this good for everybody? Thumbs up. Okay, perfect. And then the same here, this is another example, but here with pu, which breaks up into Well, the u becomes o when it takes guna, and then you add the a. The o is broken up into a and u. The u becomes its semivowel va, and this is where we get bhavatu at the end. Guna of the root vowel plus the a. The root vowel is complex. So, well, or once we guna it, it's complex. We split it up, and then the second part of that complex vowel becomes semivowel. Yeah? Okay. That's good. And here's another example that was also in Goldman 3.15, ubha plus u plus ava. So, well, this is the top part is ubhau, which is the dual case plus ava. And then it gets split up, the ow, into a and u and ava, and we get ubhaveva from that same Sandhi rule. Good. The next one, that's 3.16, final O, except as a result of another Sandhi operation, 3.35, which we'll look at later, is not common in word final position. Just something to note he put in there. This process that we just looked at with the complex vowels and splitting apart is obscured by an external Sandhi, so there is an exception to note. By the important rule, the y element of the complex vowel a is lost before word initial vowel other than short a, and in the case of I before any vowel. So here, so other than short is something to note. These are in bold for a reason. So these kinds of exceptions get tricky because there are these details in there. So we have svarge and indra as an example. The a that gets broken up to a and e, and that e would become its semivowel ya, but because the next vowel is a vowel other than short a, the ya gets elided or removed, and we get svarga indra, which if you looked at it, you would think is strange because two vowels next to each other would normally Sandhi, but the Sandhi in the vowels only takes one pass. We've already done a Sandhi application here, so it stays as svarga indra. Good. And this is another example here. Tasmai and adadat becomes tasma, long a, plus e, adadat. And then that e normally would become a ya. Well, it does become a ya, but then it goes away, it gets elided, and we get tasma, adadat. And this happens in the case of I before any vowel. So that's why here the example has an a, but it would be any vowel. A, e, u would do the same thing. The ya gets elided when it gets applied, the Sandhi. Yeah. Still good? Still following? Thumbs up. Yes? Okay. When the vowel sequence occurs as a result of a Sandhi rule or series of Sandhi rules, I need a space here, it is permitted to remain. In other words, in the case of vowels, only one pass through the Sandhi. So that's what I just said. We did that one pass, and we wouldn't re-Sandhi the tasma adadat or the svarga indra. Yeah. One must not subject the resultant sequence to further Sandhi. Okay. So this is a good cue for us if we ever see these two vowels abutting each other, that something must have happened for that to have remained. In the case where a final a immediately precedes a short a, the a remains unchanged, while the a, frequently unstable in initial position, and again it's referring to 335, which we'll see later, is lost. So in the example we have te abruvan, and it becomes te bruvan. So the a remains, because this is the exception to, remember up here it said, the ya is lost, any other vowel other than short a, well then this is, now it's saying what happens for short a specifically. The a remains unchanged and the a gets dropped. So it's the a that gets elided. We get te bruvan, or here bharatadeshe vasat. So just the goes away. Yeah, and if an is missing, well, that also tells us that a sandhi happened, right? All right, zooming along. Pragrihya vowels. Ooh, to be honest, like I don't know if I would catch these, but certain vowels in certain restricted environments are not subject to the above rules, and they are called pragrihya vowels and are as follows. Vowels e, u, and a, when they serve as dual endings. And you have the reference here. The e of the pronoun ami, see 19.1, so we have that to look forward to later. But that, again, is also a pragrihya vowel, or the vowels of particles or interjections. It doesn't put any in there, but I'm guessing things like o or bho or things like this. So some examples: dve, kanye, agachataha. Just remains dve, kanye, agachataha. And the same here. You can see there's no change. Oh yeah, here. So hey is an example of an interjection, and it doesn't sandhi with the following it, or the sandhi rule doesn't apply there. Yeah? Okay, so these would be things that would be out of the ordinary, so we kind of have to look out for. All right, we have another flow chart here. Do you
Francis,
want to...
I will not repeat for them the
Okay.
generic words, but I will remarks, but I will just make a specific comment
Please.
to make it slightly less confusing, because I've added one confusion from myself in the previous slide, because I had one version of these diagrams, and then Francis another, and I misinterpreted her naming convention, which is slightly different. Now I see what she meant by initial sound in the previous, and this is an extension of the previous diagram. Francis, correct me if I'm wrong. You mean the first vowel in the combination, which is technically the last vowel of the first word.
Yeah, that's how you had
While
created
I
a
somehow
diagram.
was thinking of the first vowel of the second
Yeah.
word because of the word initial. But here she meant just so far, she was always talking about two sounds. The first, which is the last sound of the first word, and the second, which is the first sound of the second word. So here we are talking about the initial sound, the first of these two sounds, whether it's a vowel or a consonant. If it's a consonant, it's a totally different story that will be covered later. But we already went through a part of this diagram, and now it's extended with the follow-up to Rule 3.8. You need to ask yourself, is this vowel a complex vowel, right? Because you started asking yourself whether it is a short or a long ah. And if you've answered this question with no, then there are all sorts of possibilities. Some of them are complex vowels. So if it's a complex vowel, if it's yes, then you go to Rule 3.12. And then you also check if it is among the rather rare exceptions covered in 3.17 to 3.20. If no, then you check another set of exceptions, which are related to the pragrihya vowels that Francis just covered. And if the answer here is yes, you apply the Rule 3.21, and there's no sandhi change. So in case it is indeed a pragrihya vowel, if the answer is no, then again, no sandhi changes applicable. So in a sense, both answers lead to the same outcome. Back to you, Francis.
Great. Thanks, Federico. So we're now moving on to explaining initial and final and absolute final positions for sounds. So initial is pretty straightforward. It's the first sound of the word. And then the final position sounds he treats or calls different things. There's word final, so it's the sound at the end of the word, or word final position. But then he speaks about absolute final. So word final, it's called that regardless of what follows. Absolute final is at the end of the sentence, or if it's cited on its own, so not used in a sentence at all. So this is what he's been using in the text. So when we look up a word, for example, in the glossary, that's considered cited by itself and is in absolute final position. And then the third point here, certain sounds almost always change in word final position. These sounds will usually be represented in final position by other sounds we call the original sounds, which are important despite the fact that they rarely occur in final position, original finals. So this is where it can get a little confusing because it had an original final to the word, but then got changed to its absolute final. So you'll have the absolute final where it's by itself or at the end of a phrase, but it had an original final. Yeah? It'll hopefully become clearer as we go, but an important distinction because of the way he treats it in the description, the rules to follow. Absolute finals. Note, external Sandhi operations are performed on word finals with the absolute final as the point of origin. Yeah? Any of the vowels, long or short, simple or complex, may occur in absolute final position. So they can be in that last place. But then there are some that can't, and we're moving on to that right now. Consonants in absolute final position. Non-palatal stops. Of the stops or sparshas, of the vargas, other than the palatal, that's the second position. Only the first, non-voiced, non-aspirated, I put minus V, minus A to try to shorten so we can see, of each varga is possible in absolute final position. Ka, da, da, and pa. So that first kind of line of that main block of consonants. If others of the series with either or both of the features of voicing and aspiration occur as original finals, they are replaced by the first of their series. Okay, we'll see that further down. So anushtub, it won't be able to end in this bh. It goes to the first of its series. This is in the fifth mouth position, the labial mouth position, and that becomes p at the end. And then here, similar in another example, suhrit becomes suhrit. The t is the first sound of that group of sounds. Palatal stops. Palatals cannot appear in absolute final position. So original final ch becomes k, and original final j becomes ta, the third mouth position, or k. And this is one that we're going to look at a lot because we get to a lot of sandhis around this. Original final s, the most common of the consonantal original finals, s, becomes visarga in absolute final position. And we'll talk about that more in 3.26. Nasals, m and n, are very common in absolute final position, but are subject to a number of important changes, and we see that later in 346. Original final r also becomes visarga and behaves in some environments like final s. That's, again, a later point that we'll cover. And then original final consonant clusters. Original final consonant clusters are reduced to the first consonant of the cluster. So for gachant, for example, this is a verb conjugation for gum, and it becomes gachant, but then it gets reduced to gachan because you can't have a double consonant in absolute final position. So I made this chart based on that information above. All these Vowels, any vowels can be an absolute final position. Visarga can be an absolute final position. And then we have ka. Oh, I should have this line up. Sorry, this is my OCD. Don't mind me. Oh, I can't fix it now. I'll fix it later. But these should all line up. They're the first of their varga. They can be an absolute final position, except for the palatal. Cha becomes ka. That's mentioned above. And the ja becomes da or ka. Down here, the ra can become visarga, and the sa becomes visarga, and the na and the ma, they get subject to different situations, and we look at that later in 3.46. Okay, we hanging in? We're good. Just want to make sure. All right. This is where you do your mini talk about visarga and sa, right, Federico?
Yes.
You're up to bat. Do you want to share your doc?
Yes. Could I?
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Do you see the slide?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let me just make it full screen. Well, you were just asked by Francis if you are hanging in there. And since you are, this will be your final blow because it's very confusing. Hopefully not the final blow, not even an initial blow. But we should necessarily go through this pain because Goldman's try to make our life quite interesting all the time, and this is an instance of it. It took me a long time with my study buddy to figure out what they are doing and what they are thinking at all. And then we tried to explain to each other, to other people. So we found a lot of psychological barriers for understanding it, even when it was clear to us. So forgive me that I'm verbose, but I've put different approaches for the explanation of this so that one might possibly click. So unlike most other books, Goldman and Goldman have a peculiar approach to Sandhi and writing, which may confuse many people terribly. Yeah, I've said it. So according to them, all you see as ending in Visarga is actually, in some sense, ending in S, with the exception of those that end in R, and there are just two cases, two exceptions, Punar, Pratar. So you might wonder, why do they write Visarga when you see in the glossary or in some tables or whatever different examples are given here? And the explanation is quite subtle. It lies in the Oscura Rule 3.29a on page 32, which states that the original final S becomes Visarga in absolute final position, right? So Francis will cover the absolute final positions and absolute final positions. So it's almost like catch-22, although it's originally S. You cannot write it down because at the moment you write it down as a separate word, you need to apply this rule and it immediately becomes Visarga. So then you somehow need to reverse engineer this thinking of theirs. So yeah, but before getting to it, let me say that many other books, teachers, approaches use a completely different understanding. For them, if it's written Purushaha in the glossary, it's Purushaha. So it's ends in Visarga. So then things might be different in terms of the Sandhi rules. Because for Goldman's, since a word, say Purushaha, that you see in the glossary, and you reverse engineer to Purushas, is ending in Sa. So you need to apply their rules, and it might change to something else. It might change to a Visarga. And if none of the rules are applicable, then S remains. While in other books, you would see a Sandhi happening from Visarga going to S. And of course, roughly the same is applicable for the two exceptions ending in R. So how to go with this? Below, you see the reverse engineering process. Unless you see those two exceptions ending in Visarga, every Visarga that you see at the end of the word, or a table, or any similar context where it's just a word, then you need to assume that it's actually originally ends in S. So you need to convert it to punas. I'm sorry, purushas. If you see purusha from the previous slide, and only then apply the Sandhi rules. Of course, if the two exceptions are present, then you convert the Visarga to R and go to the respective section with the exceptions. And if none of the rules apply, then you leave intact the S or R, right? So here, an example. You know, maybe Shiva, you know the word Shiva and the word Shakti for energy power. Now, disregard that the Visarga at the end of Shakti is also supposed to be S originally. But if you want to combine just these two words, you will apply this obscure rule that I cited, and it will go to Visarga. So we are dealing just with the last sound of Shiva's, which is S, and the first sound of Shakti, which is Sh. And after some search, I should have put the rule number, and I will put it once this is sent to you. It happens that you need to apply one of the rules and convert the sa to a visarga. So ultimately, you will write Shivaha Shaktihi. But it is according to Goldman after the application of a Sandhi rule, a transformation. What happens for other books, people approaches, which is like almost 90 something percent, you will not do anything because you will see Shivaha as Shivaha, and none of the rules that the alternatives have will be applicable. So you will conclude that no Sandhi happens. You see the difference and the danger somehow intermixing the two sets of rules. So with this explanation, I return the control back to Francis.
So this was meant to, hopefully this clarified something instead of confusing you more, but for a lot of people, including myself, I learned them as Visarga Sandhis, and even Professor Bryant himself referred to them as Visarga Sandhis. But in Goldman, he considers the Sa as the original final, and then the Visarga as absolute final. And we did have a question in the chat, and the question was, doesn't this process convert Sa to Visarga, then apply Sandhi to Visarga, violate the rule of no duplicate Sandhi? But if we go above here, he does say that the external Sandhi operations are performed on word finals with the absolute final as the point of origin. So for him, the Visarga is the absolute final form of the Sa. And it's as of that point that you would apply the Sandhi rules. But regardless, of however it's treated, in Goldman, this is how he's treating it. It's as original final Sa, absolute final Visarga. In those other texts that Federico was referring to, where they considered a Visarga rule, the end result is the same in both of those. His example was Shiva. Yeah?
I apologize. At some point, may I also clarify this, the answer to this question in the chat?
Clarify the answer to the question?
Yeah, there was a question in the chat.
Yes.
Oh, I assume that you're replying to the question in the chat.
Yes, I was saying that here he
Okay.
notes that the
Yeah.
operations are performed on the absolute final. And that's
Yeah,
why.
may I also clarify once you finish,
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
like additional clarification? Yes, so everything with this way of thinking Goldman's is confusing. So on the one hand, for them, let's take an example, Purushaha, we think, but for them it's Purushas. So when they write it down, they apply one Sandhi rule, which is the one that Francis just cited, and it's written Purushaha. So you have to mentally convert, reverse engineer it back to the original Purushas. And when it's in some combination, then you apply a different Sandhi rule to the Purushas ending in S, which has nothing to do with this. So it's not another Sandhi rule that is applied.
Okay. I see what you did. Okay, it's perfect. Well, hopefully this is not confusing anybody more, but once we get to the actual examples, I think it will be more clear. Okay, so here we are. To changes to original final set, the topic of much debate here at this point, or much discussion. So original final is sa, but can be replaced with visarga, ha, or with a semivowel, ra. Original final sa is among the most common final sounds in the language, but the absolute final will be visarga. So its original is sa, but the absolute final is ha. So if we see it at the end of the sentence, this will be the form that it takes, or on its own, this is the form it takes. Original final sa becomes visarga in absolute final position. Agnis becomes agnihi. Final sa before any voiced initial, any vowel or voiced consonant becomes ra. So before a vowel here, agnis becomes agnir, iva. Vishnos becomes vishnor, ayudham. Gatis becomes gatir, nasti. Hares plus gaus becomes harer, gau. Because all of these initial sounds are voiced. A vowel or a voiced consonant. But something to note, if the following sound is ra, which is also voiced, the semivowel ra, we avoid the sequence of double ra. There is a further change. So the first ra that was from the sa becoming ra is lost, and the preceding vowel, if short, is lengthened. So we start with agnis, rochate, it becomes agnir, rochate, but you can't have a double ra, so the first ra gets elided, and this first e, can I see? Oh, it should be long e here. I should be in my Unicode here. Agni rochate, it's right in my Devanagari here. So not only does the ra get elided and disappear, but the preceding vowel now is long. Yeah? Is this good? Nodding heads. Perfect. All right, 329C. S before non-voiced initials. I should put a minus V here. Non-voiced initials varies according to two categories of the following initial. Stops of the three vargas in the same mouth position of the three non-voiced sibilants. The sibilants, vargas, and non-voiced stops are. So these are the ones, I mean, this is a whole description, but these are the particular ones that he's referring to. Sh, so the talavya mouth position, the second. Sh, the murdhanya, third mouth position. And sa, dantya, fourth mouth position. And these are the the consonants in question. Yeah, ch, cha, da, ta, and ta, ta. And then there's all other non-voiced consonants, including the sibilants themselves. The sibilants are non-voiced. So, according to one of these categories, different things will happen. So, according to the first, this, if it is one of these consonants that are from these same vargas, we have haris plus chalati becomes harish chalati. The original final sa becomes the sibilant corresponding to the varga of this initial. So the sibilant for cha, you can see, is sha. So your sa becomes sha in front of cha. And we have another example of the same here. The sa before cha, still same varga, same mouth position, and it also becomes sha. Down here we have a ta in cerebral third or muditanya mouth position, and that becomes the sha of the third mouth position. And then here we have agnis tikshna, and there's, according to Goldman, no change because this is its original final, right? The sa, and so it's agnis tikshna, same varga as the ta. Of the above 6 stops, cha, cha, ta, 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 only cha and ta are really common in word initial position. Therefore, the most frequently encountered changes are sa to sha and sa to sa, or no change. Okay, so that's that first point up here. Now this second point, all other non-voiced consonants, including the sibilants themselves, the original final sa before all other non-voiced word initials is changed to visarga. So haris pashyati becomes harich or harihi pashyati, haris kanati, harich kanati. So before any other non-voiced initials, the sa becomes visarga. Okay. The endings us and as are of extremely common occurrence, therefore it is important to learn the forms these endings take before the various kinds of word initials. Original final sa after a and a behaves the same way as original final sa after other vowels in absolute final position. Oh yeah, sorry, I should mention, because I went through these quite quickly, is all of these that I just went through were for the following vowel being anything other than a. So in all my examples here, this was e, this was long, a. Oh, this is not a good example for that then. Following any other vowel other than a. But down here, we have original final sa after a vowels. Oh, sorry. No, this is still right because it's this one we're looking at. The vowel preceding your sa. Yeah, so all of these were non-a in the above examples, and these ones are going to be a examples. So a lot of them behave the same after other vowels in absolute final position before non-voiced vowels. Note, where they differ is before voiced initials. So it'll be the same for non-voiced, but here we have to see what the difference is for the voiced initials. Ramas pashyati, so this is a non-voiced. So it just applies that same rule we just looked at, ramah pashyati, and it becomes visarga. Here, ramas sitam pashyati, ramah sitam pashyati. So it's the rule here that we just looked at above, same application. Ramash chalati, so these are all, they have an a preceding the sa, but because it's in front of a non-voiced, acts the same way as we saw in the above examples. Okay, but now if we have original final us before voiced initials, it will undergo one of the 2 transformations depending on what the initial is of the following word. So any voiced consonant or the vowel short a, there's one thing that happens, or any vowel other than short a, there's another change that happens. So this is one that we see a lot, this rule 335, this first part mentioned here. Before a voiced or short a, original final us changes to O, while a following initial short is also lost. So this is sometimes called the Soham rule. Here, examples, Ramas gachati becomes Ramo gachati. So the as becomes an O, and then, this is fine, this remains because this isn't an initial Pashyatas Ragnya becomes Pashyato Ragnya, right? These are voiced consonants. And then here we have an example with a short Ramas ayam becomes Ramo, and this initial gets elided, and it becomes yam, Ramo yam. And same here, Pashyatas and Arjunasya becomes Pashyato Arjunasya, Pashyato Arjunasya. So the gets elided again there. Before any vowel but short original final s becomes and the vowel hiatus remains unchanged. So here we have Ramas Uvacha, and it becomes Rama Uvacha. Any vowel but short this becomes so the sa drops and the vowel remains. So again, another thing for us to look out for when there's two vowels here, to tell ourselves something has happened because they didn't. Then re-sandhi, Rama Uvacha. And then Budhas, Iva Vidyaya becomes Budha Iva Vidyaya. The sa gets dropped and the vowel remains, and there is no extra sandhiing here because we've already had one pass through sandhi. And there are two specific lexical items, and they show up pretty regularly with original final s when it comes to either of the common nominative singular masculine pronouns saha or esha becomes a before any consonant, whether voiced or unvoiced. So just any consonant following will make the, well, here visarga, but it's original final sa. So the sa part of the pronoun drops, and it becomes Sa Krishna, here Esha Shukhosti, and he put 2 in there. This is your 335 rule, the Soham rule, where O becomes an O, and then the gets elided, and here the Sa, this gets dropped. Yes? We good? Okay, I think this is like halfway. Oh wait, I'll just do this one. Maybe these two. Original final as becomes a before any voiced word initial vowel or consonant without exception. So here, hatas, viras, gachanti, svargalokam becomes hata. The sa just drops in front of this voiced sound. It would be the same if it had been a vowel. Yeah. And then we have the original final ar, which Federico already made reference to, where there's really only 2 examples. Before non-voiced consonants in absolute final position behaves like us. That's where we can go back up to all the us rules that we looked at. Before voice sounds, except ra, it remains. Right, because we can't have double ra. Sanskrit doesn't allow the consonantal sequence ra, ra. There are a few instances in the language where ra is preceded by a vowel other than a. The rules for these are the same as for ar. Final ar should not be confused with final as, though original final sa after a non-a vowels becomes ra before an initial voiced sound. An original final ra becomes ash, arsh, or us in the same environments as does original final us. So before voiced initials, original final us and as become ar and ar. Original final ar never becomes o. Original final ar is virtually restricted to these 2 adverbs, punar and pratar. So we just would learn these specific words. Yeah, so punar, punar, punah, punah, because this is a non-voiced. It becomes visarga. And here, same thing, visarga, but here because it is voiced, it remains punar. And here, same thing, because this is voiced, it remains. Yeah, so unless it is a non-voice that's following, it'll remain ara. Otherwise, it becomes visarga. Okay. I think, yeah, because now we're going on to consonant Sandhi. How is everybody feeling? Good. Do we have questions up to this point? Or need clarification up to this point? No? Is that because I'm doing a really good job, or is it because it's a lot of information? Okay. It's a lot of information and we're freaking out. No, it's good.
I would say both.
Both, yeah. A little of column A, a little of column B.
Yes.
With some exceptions in between. Will I share these charts? Absolutely, I will share my charts. Yeah, no problem. We'll share the
Well,
charts.
and thank you for those charts. I mean, it makes everything, you see it just a little bit differently than how it was presented in Goldman, and it clicks in kind of on another level.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I really want it to be just like rules, but then some of the details and the wording is important. And I try to eliminate like as much just extra explanation unless people want to go down those paths. But yeah, so thanks, Marge.
No, that's great.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's plow on. I think we can do this. Yeah, nice, because I have some internal Sandhis there at the end. Okay, so we're here. Just as avoidance of vowel hiatus is the general principle of vowel Sandhi, there is to a great extent, the overriding principle of consonant Sandhi is avoiding contact of markedly dissimilar consonants. Results in alteration. Yes? Okay. We're back. We're dialed in. Here we go. So we can see we're in this document, right? Just as the avoidance, that's what okay, perfect. So we're avoiding contact of markedly dissimilar consonants results in alteration of one feature of one or both sounds. So all of these Sandhi rules are really to create more fluidity of sound, and it'll be the same situation with the consonants, trying to make it as smooth to pronounce as possible. In general, a non-voiced final sparsha of any varga becomes the voiced non-aspirate of the same varga before a voiced initial svara or vyanjana. So this is svara is vowel and vyanjana is consonant. So just a voiced initial. In general, such finals are unchanged before non-voiced initials. So here we have krodhat pavati samohaha, and it becomes krodad pavati samohaha. So this da becomes its voiced component da in the same mouth position, fourth mouth position. And the same here, asit, asuraha becomes asid, asuraha, samohat. Because this is unvoiced, sa, all the sibilants are unvoiced, then it remains as ta. Okay. Exception, final ta when it precedes an initial sparsha of the palatal class, second mouth position, ta lavya or cha varga, or retroflex class, third mouth position, murthanya or ta varga becomes de-aspirated of the same class as the initial and is voiced or non-voiced as in 343. So here we have tat, chikirshati becomes tach, chikirshati, and tat jahati becomes taj jahati. So taking on the same class, the same varga that de-aspirated. Okay. Important note, final ta when it precedes an initial sh becomes ch and the following sh becomes cha. So tat shrutva kupitas abhavat shivaha becomes tat shrutva. So this ta became a cha and this initial sh became a cha. Yeah. And this, I think, would be we would see this and think this looks really funky, so assume that some kind of Sandhi happened there. Oh, and then here we have our Soham rule. He likes to combine rules, so we are reminded what happened here. It's the 335 rule from above. Oh, and here he does it twice. The ch, chiva, abat, abhavat. This ta becomes cha, and this sha becomes cha. Okay. In external consonant contact with a nasal, assimilation may affect not only voicing of the sparsha, but also its mode and even the point of articulation. It's varga, so it will change mouth positions. Any word final stop, sparsha, before a word initial nasal, anunasika, becomes the nasal of its proper varga. So we have atat, ma, kuru becomes etan, because this is the nasal of the fourth mouth position, ma kuru, because it has come up against this nasal here, ma. And the same here, vak mayaha, the ma makes this ka change to its nasal of its varga, which is the guttural mouth position, the first, kantya, and it becomes vang mayaha. Yeah? So again, it's just, vakma or vangma just makes a fluidity of sound because they're both nasals now instead of a guttural stop and then a nasal sound. Most important and the most common rule of this category concerns absolute final ma. This is a really easy one that happens often. One of the most frequent finals in Sanskrit, final ma, becomes anusvara before any following initial consonant, voiced or unvoiced. So we have ramasvanam gachati becomes ramo. Again, there's that 335 rule before a voiced. And then this becomes ma because there's a following consonant. And that would be the case regardless of voicing or not. So a following consonant makes your ma an anusvara. Treatment of absolute final na is a common final and subject to the following changes. And this is 351 to 354. Na before a voiced stop of the three sibilant vargas, so those three middle ones that go with sh, sh, and sa, so second, third, and fourth, becomes anusvara. In addition, the sibilant from the same varga with the following initial is inserted between the anusvara and the initial. So we have kasmin chit nagare avasat raja. And we get kasmimsh, so you see the na became the anusvara, and the sh, because that's of the same varga as the ch, chin nagare vasad raja. And here, I put them there. Look at me. These are the rules that are applied here in the example. So this is the rule we're looking at. But then between these two is the 347 rule that we just saw, where it becomes the nasal of the same varga following. Here is rule 320, which is an exception to those complex vowels where the ya gets dropped and the initial is elided. Oh no, the remains and the a remains and the initial gets elided because it's unstable. And then 343 is the one where the consonant becomes the voiced in front of another voiced. So all of these, he put all of these sandhis in this one example because he's slick like that. And then, or both of them, right? Professor Brian always says we should give credit to both. Murkan tyajati panditaha becomes murkansh. So again, that same na becoming anusvara. And then the sa that gets inserted, it's the same varga as the ta. And so this is what we end up with here. Final na before a voiced initial of the talavya, the second mouth position, or murdhanya, third mouth position, vargas, becomes the nasal of that varga. Dhanavanjayati panditaha, the nasal that goes with ja is a nya. Dahavanya vanjaya tindra. So here again, there's multiple sandhis, the one we just looked at. This should be actually 352. And then this one is the easy first one we saw, 3.3, where your e's meet each other and they become indra. This isn't the same example now that I look at it. I'll have to, this should be indra here. I will fix this afterwards, 352. So this was indra, and the e from Jayati, and the beginning of Indra became a long E. So I'll fix that afterwards. Final na before initial sh becomes nya, and the sh becomes cha. So it's it's similar to the 345 that we saw earlier. The na. Well, see, this would be one. So who was it that brought up that question? It was Sabra, who was like, you would only do one sandhi, so then you change it to visarga, that's one, and then you do another sandhi after that. So this is one of the ones where there's two things happening, because the na becomes nya, and then the sh becomes cha. But we had another one like that earlier, where there's kind of two things happening at the same time. So your na becomes madhuran, for madhuran becomes madhurany, the second mouth position, and your initial sh becomes cha. So from madhuran, shabdhan, shranoti, we get madhuran, chabdhan, shranoti. So both of these become the same as the sh varga, or become the nasal of the same varga, and then that initial sh becomes a cha, just like in rule 345. Final na before the initial la becomes anusvara, and an additional la is inserted before the original one. So we have uttaman, lokan, labate, dharmana, nyaha. The na becomes a anusvara. And then we have another la inserted before the lokam, labhate, dharmanya. In the text, they have these special, they're chandra bindus. And we didn't really, when we had our Janaki session, she addressed it quickly, but if I am correct, you can look it up, you can Google it. It's essentially anusvara, but from the explanation, it was for anusvara, it's a nasalization following the vowel, and this is the chandra bindu is the nasalization happening at the same time as the vowel, which I don't even know how that would be done, but this was the explanation that was found. But essentially, for our purposes, anusvara, and then an extra la inserted in there. Final ng and ra and n are written as doubled when they occur after a short vowel and precede any initial vowel. So stuvan agachati and becomes stuvan agachati, so a double na. So this is after a short a and preceding an initial vowel. Here, Hasan Iva, the same thing, it's a short a here, double the na, and this is a vowel. And so this is the situation in which that would occur. Yeah, these are more of Federico's famous charts. I don't know if you want to go through your flow charts or you think...
Francis, probably not this one, but the next, because it's confusing in terms of this business, sa ending versus visarga ending. And this will require even less words than before, but will illustrate the main point of difference between Goldman's and other people's approach. So suppose you took a visarga ending word, you realized how Goldman's think, and you reverse engineered it to sa ending, unless it's one of the two exceptions, in which case it's ra ending. And then, depending on what the other word is, so if the final consonant is such, then you apply 3.26 or 3.24, and the final consonant becomes a visarga before a vowel. You see, you applying a rule for it to become visarga. For other people, it was a visarga and no rule was applied, no transformation whatsoever. So that's why it's dangerous to intermix Goldman's rules with other people's rules unless you know what you are doing. But if the answer was no, then you ask yourself, is this final consonant a non-voiced stop? Suppose it is, you say yes, then you apply rule 3.43, and this non-voiced stop becomes voiced before a vowel. If the answer was no, you ask yourself a further question, is the final consonant a nasal after a short vowel? If it's yes, you apply the rule 3.55, and you double the final nasal before a vowel. And Francis showed you the rule and an example. If the answer was no, then no Sandhi happens. And guess what? The sa or ra remains. So no Sandhi is sa or ra remaining, while for other people, there will be Sandhi from Visarga to sa or ra. So once again, big difference. Back to you, Francis.
It's like a newscast. Over to you on the East Coast. Okay. We're almost done for these. It's very exciting. Initial, oh, this is supposed to be, oh, look at me catching mistakes. This is ha. Initial ha after final sparsha becomes the voiced aspirated sparsha of the varga of the preceding final. So we have etat harati chaura, or chauraha, etad, why is there there's a thing here, etad harati chaura. So here you see how this becomes its voiced before, and then the ha becomes the voiced and aspirated of that varga. Yeah. And the same here, vakhi devata becomes vag, so this becomes its voiced, and then this gha is the voiced plus its aspiration, and then devata. It's good. Two simple but important and very common internal sandhi changes. Sa to sha and na to na. Trying to be mindful of my pronunciation. The dental sibilant sa, if not in word initial position or followed by the semivowel antasta ra, is changed to sh if immediately preceded in a word by any vowel other than a vowels or by the consonants ka or ra. This is a doozy, because for me, I had just thought, oh, if there's a preceding ra or a preceding third position, then it would become, sha or na. But then there are all these actual, like, extra kind of cases or details to this particular change. So sometimes it won't become a sha or a na, but for the most part it does, which he says down here. This is very wordy, but if ever you see it and you think, why didn't it become a sha or a na, you might see if any of these apply, if there is an intervening consonant, ka or ra, or things like any of these other details that he outlines. So we have sidati vanam gachati becomes, but ram. Oh, I see. Sidati vanam gachati, but ramo vanam gachati. Hang on. I'm trying to see how this applies. Oh, yeah. Okay. Sidati, he sits, but vishidati, he sits down. So this is what this is. Here, it just remains a sa, but here, it's vishidati. I'd have to look at the example. Why? See, I'm getting myself. If the word initial is followed by a semivowel, dental sibilant. Change to sh. Oh, yeah, because there's a, what is preceding it? Not a word positional, followed by the semivowel. Oh, but it's not followed by a semivowel here. It's changed to sh if immediately preceding a word by any vowel other than a. I'm going to have to take a peek at my text. Does anyone else have yeah, I'm like questioning this. I'm sure I just wrote it down exactly. Why this is becoming a sh. su, badeve shu. The dental ushman, if not in word final position or followed by the antastata, is changed to sh if immediately preceded. Oh, that's why. Because it's preceded by a vowel other than a.
Yeah, it's
So
the
it becomes
non-A
a sh.
vowel.
Yeah, thank you.
That
So here, this is what's happening there. Same thing here. This is kanyasu because it's preceded by an a, but because it's a non-a vowel, it becomes a sh. It's preceded by a. Yeah. See, but punakshi. So this is bhunkshi. Should be bhunakshi. So this is again preceded by a non-vowel, but note, and Professor Bryant had noted this in class, that the u doesn't need to be right next to the s for it to become a sh. Bhunakshi. This should be, ooh. Okay, I'm going to fix this for you guys, but this should actually be, let's see if I can do it quickly. This is a conjunct here, punakshi. And then sya dasyati, but bhavishyati, preceded by an e. So note that if you see a sh, it likely used to be a sa, but became sh through internal sandhi, preceded by a vowel other than a. If na is preceded in a word by sh, ra, liter, or ri, and if no talavya, murtanya, or dantya consonant, except for the letter ya, intervenes between the two, then the na is changed to a na if it is immediately followed by a vowel, semivowel, or nasal. So again, a lot of specificity in the conditions in which this occurs, but often you will see a change of na to na. It says the above rule is complex, no kidding, very wordy, but also quite common and therefore necessary to know in order to spell many words correctly. For the moment, it will suffice to remember that na, when preceded by ra, sha, or liter, is, ra, I said liter and ri here. This is ra, ri. I should be very careful. Ra, ri. So if it's preceded by ra, is retroflexed in many environments, and that the change, therefore, is a common one. So here we have Rama plus Ana becoming Ramena by Rama. Brahman plus A, instrumental singular ending, Brahmana by the absolute Dharna. When you see, likely used to be a na. So the same as up here. If you see a sha, likely used to be a sa. Okay. This is good. These two rules account for the great majority of occurrences of the sounds sha and na in Sanskrit. So we'll see a lot of these changes often in your internal sending. Yes?
Were we like right at the end? Because I want to say something really bad. I mean, not, I want to say it badly. I don't want to say something bad, but
this is awful.
I mean, since I'm a Goldman partisan, I think I can actually say this. Those two rules that you went through, to the rest of the world as the S rule and the N rule, which of course Goldman would not stoop to that sort of thing. But this actually brought me to a dead standstill. I could never figure out where that Murdanya in came from, and it's everywhere. So these are relatively simple rules if you boil all the Goldman out. And if you look up something called the S rule or the N rule, that's what these two things are. And just for me personally, every time I did this chapter, which is way more than twice, I would be exhausted by this point. And I had the bandwidth to even like read these two things. And these two phenomena happen constantly. I mean, it's a super common thing. And I just felt like I had a God moment when I found out about the S rule and the N rule. And there's even some Sanskrit thing, the sa-ness and the na-ness of this. I won't go there, but I can almost tell you what the rules are. So if you boil it down and look at it really closely, you will see this constantly, all the time. And it does clear up a whole bunch of just that niggling thing about why is this changing all the time? You know, I just want to encourage anybody who's way back where I have.
Oh, that's great.
Francis, could
Yes,
I
Federico.
say that you're close to ending the external Sandhi, and
Yes.
Alyssa mentioned about exhaustion and dying of exhaustion, and 6 people left. So maybe it's a natural place to split.
Let's see. Okay, here I'll show you. I'll show you what I have coming up. It's really just the few internal sandhis that show up in chapter 7. So you know what? Now that I look at them, I mean, there's only a few of them, but
and
they
it will
are.
be on the recording. It will be on
It'll
the
be
recording.
on the recording.
So, yeah. So
Yes.
yeah. Right.
But no, but it's a fair point. They do have to do with Gana because they're from chapter 7. And I know that was one of the questions in the poll that Alice sent out earlier, if Gana is something that people want to review. But as I said, there's only a few, 1, 2, I mean, there's a lot of examples to them, 3, 4, 5. That were mentioned in that particular chapter. But if we end up reviewing Ganas, maybe we look at those. So you guys let me know. It's 3:23. If you feel like you can take maybe another half hour. We had thought for 2 hours. So Alice is giving me thumbs up. Wow. Okay. Everybody else? So good to go for a half hour. Oh, Marge is really enthusiastic. Oh, Diana says no. Okay. See, if we need okay, it's mostly thumbs up, Diana. So if you need to go, if you need to go from exhaustion, you can. But
No,
yeah,
I need to go. I'm sorry, but I watched the recording.
worries.
It's okay.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Bye. All right. Okay, so the most important of all the ganas to form the present stems is the first gana. The a is suffix to the root. This is basically review because we saw this earlier when we were breaking down the complex vowels. The a is suffix to the root, whose vowel takes guna, if possible, and then the endings are added to the stem. So tiaj, the root is tiaj, and then the stem is tiaja, because you add the a to the stem. There was no guna here. I mean, a is its own guna. We get tiajati. Yeah. For bhu, this is the root, it will take guna, your vowel here, and become bho. And then you add the a, because for this first group, the first gana, that's the sign you would add a. And then the o gets broken up. This is a complex vowel to a and u, and then your u becomes the semivowel v before a, so that's where we get pavati. And this was the example we saw earlier in 3.13. For vrit, when you take guna here, it becomes vart. You add the a, you get varta. And then te, because this would be an atmanipada ending, vartate is the resulting conjugation. And G, we saw this earlier with jayati. Vad just adds the a. This is just a, so there's no, the guna is the same, as its own guna. And then the mi, this becomes vadami, and there's extra two, if you look at 4.22, these endings end up getting long as, but that's discussed in the kind of section, and I'm assuming in this reference 4.22. Okay, so that's something we've already seen, the internal sandhi. For the second gana, in some non-a ganas, the present stem, so this is a non-a gana, the present stem may often end in a consonant, which is then often placed next to an initial consonant of an ending. This brings into play a number of sandhi rules. So a voiced, non-aspirated, taking a peek if there's any, I'll have to go, okay. A voiced non-aspirated sparsha before a non-voiced, as in absolute final position, is changed to its corresponding non-voiced sparsha. So here we have vid, and the ending T. And this, I'm assuming it takes guna, becomes ve, and then this becomes t in front of the t. It becomes ve-ti. Yeah, it's non-voiced sparsha. So the d going to non-voiced t. A sparsha or nasal of the dantya varga following any sound of the murdhanya varga, so the fourth, following the third, except for ra, is normally changed to its corresponding murdhanya sound. And so compare with 358 and 359 that we saw earlier. We have dvish, that becomes dvesh plus the t, dvesh t, she, he, it, hates. The sound sh when it, oh sorry, so this is it. The nasal following any sound is normally changed to its corresponding murdhanya sound. Yeah, so instead of da, it becomes da in the third mouth position here, because of this sh. The sound sh, when it precedes the sound sa, is generally changed to ka. The following sa is then, by Rule 358, changed itself into sh. So dvish becomes dvesh, but then adding the c, this sh becomes a ka. But then this sa becomes a sh, and where we get dvekshi. So your original third mouth position sh has become a ka, first mouth position ka, and then the following ending that had begun with sa now begins with sh. A nasal before sa is changed to anusvara. Well, it's a pretty simple one. So han becomes hansi in front of the sa. Root final cha, when it precedes any consonant vyanjana other than a nasal or semivowel, or the semivowel v, is treated as though it were the sound ka in the same position. So we have vach, and it becomes vakti. Vach plus c becomes vak shi. So here, this becoming the sh. Yeah? It's good? Okay. And then there are specific rules for the hu gana. There are two, or we were just looking at the adgana. We're at the hu gana. There are two extremely common roots in the hu gana that require special attention. A root vowel generally appears in its short form in abhyasa. So this hu gana is the one that has reduplication, abhyasa. So we have da becomes da. Yeah, so it's short form. The vowel was long a, but it became short a, da. Root vowel r is changed to e in abhyasa. So in our example, brh, it is bibra. So this r became an e, and this, yeah, and then this, oh yeah, so it doesn't have aspiration, and it's in the abhyasa. I think it here it mentions it later. As is evident in example B, an initial aspirated consonant, which this one is, bh, is represented in abhyasa by its non-aspirated counterpart, which is why this is just b instead of bhi. The aspiration gets removed. So here's another example of that. Dha becomes da-dha. So the aspiration removed here. But then it gets, yeah, so this beginning part doesn't have its aspiration, and this is a shortened vowel, just as up here. An initial kantya, first mouth position, is represented by the talavya palatal corresponding to it in voicing. Oops, I should be in this one. While initial ha is replaced by ja. So we have hu becomes juhu instead of hoo-hoo. Yeah? Okay. Okay, two more. Irregular roots of the hu gana. There are two extremely common roots in the hu gana that require special attention. The roots da and dha, which are here in our above examples, are alike in completely losing their root vowel in all weak forms. So here we have dadati, and this is strong. But then in its weak form, it becomes da, dma. So this a after the da has disappeared in weak. It collapsed. It's not there anymore. And the same thing here. We have dadhati. This is long a, and then we have dadhati, which is short a. Let me just double check that. I want to make sure that there isn't more collapse happening there, but I think that's what it is. 726. Yep, short a instead of long a. When the dh of the weak stem dad comes directly before ta, tha, or sa of an ending, it becomes da, and its last aspiration appears in the initial of the abhyasa syllable. Breaking rule 723. So down here is our example. It's dhat, dah. So it becomes da instead of daha. Its last aspiration goes to this first. So this would have been dadha, right? Like this. But then this part, it became a da. And then this aspiration went back to that first part, daha. So it becomes dhat, dah. And this is the ending. Does that make sense? We have some confused faces. Should I say it again? Yeah? We go again? Okay. So here, let's start here. So we have our dha. It reduplicates. So it's dadha, but the aspiration is lost here in the reduplication. Yeah? But here, if it has the ending beginning with a ta, a ta, or a sa, then it becomes this second part, this part of the da, becomes a ta, and it loses its aspiration, but then it gets put onto the first syllable. Okay, now I'm seeing some nods. So now it's dha, ta. This is what replaces this, but its aspiration has gone over here. Yeah? Okay. Dattaha. Perfect. The seventh, or rudgana, like the second, is subject to internal consonant sandhi. The following rules are applicable. A nasal immediately following a sparsha is changed to the nasal of the same varga as that sparsha. So we have yuj. And it's, so the gana sign here for the seventh is it infixes na, and we get the weak stem yunj. Yeah, this is the nasal of the j. Yunj gets the nasal immediately is changed to the nasal of the same varga. Yeah. And then we get yunj plus da when you add the ending, and it becomes yunk da. The two join. Does it explain how the j becomes ka? I think that's a previous sandhi rule above, where the j becomes a ka. I'll have to look it up, but I believe that's the case. Otherwise, yeah, what else happened here? That's got to be another sandhi rule there. Root final j, or is it right here? Wait, no. Root final j of several roots that belong to this gana is treated exactly like root final ch. I think it is C7.18e. So the yuj plus the ta becomes yunkta. You2 join. 718. Did I put the 718 there that we just covered? Yeah, 718e. Root final ch when it precedes any consonant after, other than the nasal, the semi-vowel va, is treated as it were ka. So yeah, it becomes a ka. Woo! It's great when they start referring back to each other and you have to go back and forth. Okay, so that's where we get yunkta. An aspirated sparsha loses its aspiration when it occurs immediately before any sparsha or sibilant. Rud becoming runtse, U block. If a root final voiced aspirate sparsha, except as in 726b, we'll look at it afterwards, precedes initial ta or ta of an ending, the ta or ta is voiced and aspirated. So we have rud. Strong stem, rud plus t becomes runadhi. He, she, it blocks. This is rund with a na. The weak stem, rund plus ta, becomes rundha. The two block. The root voice aspirate precedes final ta, ta. The ta, ta is voiced and aspirated. Oh, yeah. So here, this d became dhi. So it's voiced form plus aspiration. And the same thing here. This became da, became dha, but with the aspiration, dha. Yeah. Okay. Except as in 726b, just for fun, we'll go back up and see what that is. When the ta of the weak stem becomes directly before ta, oh yeah, it becomes ta, and this aspiration appears in the initial, so that exception. All right. Oh my goodness. How are we feeling? The group has slowly thinned out. Was that good? Was that helpful? Yes. Are there at this point, unless anyone's brain dead, any questions or clarifications needed? Yes. Is it Sabra? Am I saying it right, or is it Sabra?
I say Sabra.
Sabra.
Okay. So last night, I attempted to make sure I was understanding these Sandhi rules. I attempted to conjugate huge, which is one of his examples, and found there were a lot of complications in there, and actually went to an AI to see if I could get a sample conjugation to compare my answers with. And when I got to the first person dual, I discovered I think maybe AI actually can hallucinate in Sanskrit, because it turns out that it gave some rules that don't exist. But for these more complicated internal Sandhi things, where can we go to get the conjugations and do some comparison?
This is a great question. So, because I've used some online. So yeah, let's say I do the same thing. Like there's a verb in there, and I go, oh, I'd like to conjugate this, and I Google it, and you can find it on websites and things like this. There are places where you can look up verb conjugations, but then sometimes, as you say, like there can be mistakes, and I think that maybe in the back end there's probably just like some algorithm that's applying certain things. So, and a lot of times it's helpful. I've used it for declensions, and I've used it for, and I can share some of those maybe with Alice, and we can do that in a follow-up email, but where I verify my work. But yeah, there are some tricky things when it comes to Sandhi and things like that. In one of the groups that, Marjana and Diana is in too, are in, we got this handy little book. It's so tiny. Here it is. It's called the Rupa Chandrika, and it's like a verb conjugation book. The thing is, it's all in Devanagari, so you'd have to brush up on your Devanagari. But you can look up verbs of particular gunas. I'd have to see if yunj is in it. It's a toughie. I could take a look for you after the call and see if it's in there. But this is what I go to for more like reliable source, and it has the different verb tenses, lat, lot, that sort of a thing.
Okay. And if we dive in specifically, the place where I just threw up my hands was if we go to the first person dual, then the model I was looking at was putting in an between the ja and the va, which led to a whole other can of worms about whether the dual singular ending is vaha or avaha.
Okay, yeah. I can see that. Do you want to... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Federico. Do you have...
Yeah, Sabra, I will paste in the chat the most advanced online tool. It is in France, but it's, as Francis pointed out, even it has errors that people have pointed out, and the owners of it are asking users to supply any errors they've noticed to them, and they will correct it. So there's no ideal solution. Probably the best is to check there, but be aware that, I don't know, maybe 3% of the time it might be wrong.
Rico? Melissa
Yep.
speaking. I don't want to bore y'all with my trials, but this issue that you're addressing right now, I think is really critical. And the example a little bit earlier, Francis, you can look back. I can't multitask here and talk and look back. But the example of da and da, that's D long A and DH long A. I've probably spent more than 2 days looking at these things that are called what Federico is referring to. I believe they're generically called conjugation or declension engines. And I just want to reinforce what Federico is saying. This is a caveat emptor sort of thing. Because in those 2 words, which were confusing to me, but through this process, I must say, I learned how to use the Monier-Williams dictionary, which is the gold standard, I believe, still after over 100 years. Okay, that's about as far upstream as we Westerners are going to be able to go. And if you can get a word in there and find a result, you're doing okay. It will force you to be, as my engineer friend says, not just precise, but also accurate. Those are 2 different things, precision and accuracy. So the degree of slowing down in what Federico is talking about, I would highly recommend that as an exercise, you take those 2 words, da and da, and run it through any of these engines that you are sampling. And the problem that I cannot believe that I recognized has to do with something I barely understand, which is the strong and weak forms, the loss of long vowels, the stuff with the T's that Francis just went through. Those I'll just call them engines for short, actually are incorrect according to the Goldman rules. So now we can cite chapter and verse for, I can do this and I know nothing. Okay. I just want to tell you all this. It's kind of an amazing intellectual exercise to do this. So I'm swearing by Goldman and I'm saying he's right. And so every other thing I look at, I try to verify what Goldman says against that thing. And I will tell you that even in RIA, which I think is the one that Federico is talking about, the French one, which is great, has at least 3 places that I can identify do not agree with the Goldman rule. The other thing, which may be AI, and I barely know what I'm saying here, is some of these things, I guess they run an algorithm, and if you enter something wrong, but it can interpret it, it will generate a result for you, even if that is incorrect or does not exist. How serious is that? And I was like, sometimes I just have to put the pen down and watch football or take the dogs to the dog park, because I like this is, but on the upside, I think it really indicates how far we have come, that we are able to experience and identify these kinds of problems. And this is where it's going to be at for us from now on. This is not Spanish. It's not French. It's not any of those user-friendly things. This is actually, I don't care what our sainted Professor Brian says, this is hard. And for a couple of thousand years, a lot of these rules, I think, have just been generated in order to explain some sort of precedent that somebody saw once 1,500 years ago. So that's an exception to the corollary of the 3rd rule regarding, the letter T before a voiced or non-voiced initial. You're just like, you can't be serious, but they are serious. So that's kind of fun. Look for what Francis just went over and see if you, number one, see if you can find da and da. See if you can look those up in the Monier-Williams dictionary. Be specific and be accurate. Then go to these conjugation engines and run them and just see what you get. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it's like a combination of figuring it out on your own, and then obviously wanting to check your work, and then some of them you can't rely on 100%. I did find it, but it's kind of not written out in the way that the rest of them are, Sabra. So I'll send you a little email.
Would you mind resharing the name of that book? I wrote it down in my head and then lost it.
It's Roop Chandrika, but I'll also send it to Alice. And I got it at Exotic India online. And it's a handy little book. It's very small. You'll also need to buy a magnifying glass.
By the way, please note that this company has a sale right now till the end of the month.
That's true.
Maybe
sales often.
till the end of the year.
Who does?
I just got the message a few days ago, and I was like, I don't know what to order, but now I know.
It's called Exotic India. Yeah, I get those promotions too. They're like, there's a sale. So I do the same. I'm like, yes.
Quick question. You said you'd be willing to share that handout. Are you going to save it in the chat or email it, or how?
I'll email it because I noticed a couple of little things. So I'll fix up my little things, which doesn't mean that you won't find potentially more things, but I'll fix up the little things I noticed, and then I'll send it over to Alice. And I'm planning on adding to it as we go, because there'll be more internal Sandhis that pop up, I'm assuming.
I'll send it out on Friday's email, Elizabeth, if it's ready by then, Francis, because I've got to send out an email on Friday for the review session, so I can add it to that.
Perfect.
I just found
Federico?
an important thing that it is available, the PDF is available for free. You know this archive, right? The Internet Archive. It's one of the largest websites by far. They contain tons of things. And I just found the free, if you wait for a second or two more, because it's downloading, I will paste it in the chat. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right.
You could also email it
or maybe
to Alice.
We'll send it later. I will send it to Alice, and she will send it to everyone. It's officially available. It's not a copyright, whatever violation.
You want to be careful of Asteya. This is good. This is good yogic practice. So anything, I think that would be the best, because Alice really sends those wonderfully detailed emails, and that way they can all be in one place and not kind of scattered around, and she can share all that with everybody that wasn't able to be here live. So I thought we'd end. Oh, thanks, Elizabeth. End with a chant. Let's just make sure everybody is muted. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Thank you for all your
Thanks,
work.
Marge.
Thanks,
Thank
Francis.
you. Thanks for coming.
And Federico, y'all are great.
Thanks,
Thank you
Federico.
both. That was wonderful.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everybody.